I am Isabella Okoye. I live in Umachi, a village full of laughter, dances, and the smell of roasted corn. The sky in Umachi is always wide and blue, and the river sings softly as it moves through the land. I was born here, in a small hut with a leaking roof and a mother who smiled with tired eyes. My father died when I was 7. He had gone fishing and never came back. People said the river took him, but my mother believed it was just his time. I was 13 when my mother died. It was a quiet morning. She told me to cook yam porridge, then lay on the mat and never stood again. After the burial, my uncles and aunties came, not to help me, but to take what little we had. They divided our goats, took our land, and left me with nothing but an old wrapper and my mother's cooking spoon. I stayed with Uncle Madhu at first. He had a big house and 3 wives. He said I could stay only if I cleaned the house and fetched water every day. I did it without complaining. But one day, his 3rd wife accused me of stealing meat from her soup. I didn't do it, but no one listened. Uncle Madhu shouted at me, slapped me, and threw me out. That night, I slept on a bench near Mama Oki's store. From that day, I became the girl everyone walked past. I begged for food. I washed people's clothes. I carried loads at the market, just to eat 1 meal a day. Some women gave me old bread. Some men called me names and laughed when I walked by. But I kept moving. I told myself, Isabella, you're still alive. Just keep walking. One evening, when the sun had turned orange, I followed a narrow path behind the village school. I didn't know where I was going. My feet hurt. My stomach ached. I passed tall trees, heard crickets singing, and soon found myself standing beside the river. It was the first time I had been that close since my father died. The water was wide and quiet. The air smelled fresh, like mango leaves after rain. I looked around and saw something strange. There was a house, small, broken, and made of wood. The door was hanging on one hinge, and the roof had a hole. But it was dry inside. I stepped in slowly, like a rat avoiding a trap. The floor creaked. Cobwebs danced in the corners. But to me, it felt like a palace. It was mine. That night, I slept on the cold floor with my mother's cooking spoon under my head like a pillow. The wind howled. Frogs croaked outside, but I was safe. The river was close, and it felt like it was watching me. I woke up to a whisper. Isabella! I sat up quickly. My heart jumped. Who's there? I asked. No answer. Just the sound of water moving, slowly like someone breathing. Isabella! The voice was soft, sweet, and came from outside. I stepped out barefoot, holding my spoon like a knife. By the river, standing above the water, was a woman. Her skin was the color of honey. Her eyes shone like glass. Her hair floated around her face like smoke. She wore a long dress made of water and stars. I couldn't move. My feet froze. Don't be afraid, she said. I have been watching you. Who are you? I asked. I am Murma, the river goddess. I gasped. My knees shook. She smiled. You are hungry. You are alone. You have been forgotten. But I see you, Isabella, and I have a gift for you. I was still breathing fast. Why me? Because you have suffered, and the river loves those who suffer quietly. She stretched out her hand, and something floated in the air. It looked like a chicken, roasted, golden, hot, and smelling like heaven. You will serve this, she said, to the people of Umachi. I blinked. Chicken. She nodded. Not just any chicken. This one feeds the body and feeds me. I didn't understand. You will cook and serve this chicken, she said. And in return, you will never suffer again. You will have gold, land, dresses, cars. People will kneel to you. You will be rich beyond your dreams. My mouth was dry. But how? Say yes. That's all. I looked at the chicken again. My belly groaned. I looked at my cracked feet, my torn wrapper, the calluses on my hands. And I said, yes. The next morning, I woke up and the house had changed. It was no longer broken. The wood was smooth and painted white. The roof was red and shiny. There were chairs, a big stove, pots, spices, and 2 large freezers full of chicken. I screamed. The river glowed like silver. The air was sweeter, and the name, Sukban Restaurant, was written in gold letters above the door. I stepped outside. My wrapper had become a pink dress. My hair was braided with golden beads. My face was glowing. And the first customer arrived. It was Mama Yuzo, the village tailor. She smelled the chicken and walked in, nose first. "I don't know what the smell is," she said, "but I must taste it." I served her one plate. She took one bite, and her eyes rolled. She smiled. She finished it all and begged for more. From that day, people started coming. At first, one by one. Then 5, then 10, then 20. People came from the next village. Some drove cars. Some came on bicycles. Some even walked for hours just to taste the chicken. They said, "This chicken is not ordinary." They said, "It tastes like joy, like sunshine, like magic." And I smiled and said, "Thank you. Welcome to Sukban." Within 2 weeks, I had made more money than any woman in Umachi. I bought land. I built a mansion with tall gates. I bought a black SUV. I hired people to clean, to cook, to sweep, to serve. The girl they once called a beggar was now Madame Sukban. They bowed when I passed. They whispered, "She is blessed." They wrote songs about me. They begged to touch my dress. At night, I sat in my mansion and looked at the stars. I thought of my mother. I wished she could see me. But deep inside, something was changing. The river no longer sang sweetly. It roared. Sometimes, I heard whispers when I closed my eyes. "Isabella, don't forget." But I told myself I was doing good. I gave people jobs. I gave food to the poor. I gave money to the sick. But the truth? Every bite of my chicken was feeding Myrma. Every bite took a small part of the soul. And I was growing richer, stronger, more powerful. But something was coming. I could feel it in the wind. And even though the world called me Madame Sukban, inside, I was still the girl by the river, waiting for what would come next. They called me Madame Sukban now. Even the king's wife came to eat my chicken. She smiled with oil on her lips and said, "God truly favors you." But I didn't tell her it was not God who gave me this life. It was the river. Business grew faster than I could count money. I opened a second restaurant beside the main road and called it Sukban Express. Young girls applied daily to become my servers. They all wanted to wear the pink and gold uniform and walk like queens. They called me Mummy, even the ones older than me. The river sent more chicken each morning. I never bought from the market. My freezers were always full. My food never finished. People noticed it, but they didn't ask too many questions. Some said it was prayer. Others said it was herbs. Only one person said something strange. His name was Amos. He was a quiet boy who sold newspapers. One day, he entered Sukban Express and sat by the window. "Madam," he said after eating, "this chicken is sweet, but my dreams are not sweet anymore." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked away. "I see a woman in the river. She calls my name. Her face looks like glass." I froze. "What is your name again?" I asked. "Amos." I smiled and packed his leftover food. "You think too much, Amos." But that night I couldn't sleep. I stood by my window and looked at the river in the distance. It looked calm, but something inside me twisted. At midnight, I heard footsteps in my kitchen. I rushed down with a torch. My chef was there, sweating and crying. "Mummy," he said, shaking. "I don't know what happened. I was cooking, then I saw her. A woman. In the pot. Her eyes were open." "What did she say?" I asked. "She said, 'Feed me.'" I fired him the next morning and paid him not to talk. I told myself it was just stress. But deep down, I knew the goddess was reminding me that my deal was still active. 1 week later, I called my driver to take me to Enugu. I needed to breathe different air. I needed to think. Inside the SUV, with music playing, I felt peace for the first time in months. I wore black sunglasses and waved at children as we passed. I told myself, "You are not the girl by the river anymore." But as we drove past the last bridge, the car jerked. The driver screamed. I looked up and saw water, just water, rushing over the road like a flood. The car stopped. My ears rang. And there she was, Myrma, standing in the middle of the road. Her dress was now made of shadows and waves. Her smile was gone. "Where are you going, Isabella?" she asked. "I just wanted to breathe," I said. "You are not done. I've been serving. I've built the name. I've done everything. She walked forward, and the road turned wet under her feet. "One last thing," she said. "A feast. You will invite everyone in Umachi. All will eat, all for free." I shook my head. "Why?" "Because I'm hungry," she said, her voice cold. "And this time I want it all." I cried. "You said I would be free." "You will be. After the feast." The road dried. The driver started the car. He didn't see her. We drove off. I didn't speak the whole way. Back home, I locked myself in my room. I didn't want to do the feast, but I couldn't say no. Every part of me felt like she was inside already. 2 days later, I printed invitations. Free Sekban feast for all villagers. People shouted with joy. They danced in the street. The king sent a thank you note. The church announced it from the pulpit, but my heart was heavy. That night, I dreamed of children crying in side plates. I dreamed of villagers walking into the river with chicken bones in their hands. I screamed in my sleep and woke up sweating. The next day, the first person went missing. It was Amos. His newspaper tray was found by the roadside. Nobody had seen him. Then the tailor's son disappeared. Then 2 servers from Sitbon Express. Then a woman who bought chicken every Sunday. I knew what was happening. I was feeding Myrma, and now she was hungry for more. I wanted to cancel the feast. I even called the town crier. But he said, "Madam, they will kill you. The whole village is waiting. The king himself will attend." I cried into my pillow. I looked at my money, my clothes, my SUV, my golden chairs, and none of it made me happy anymore. That night, I went to the river alone. "Myrma!" I shouted. "Why are you doing this?" She rose slowly from the water. Her face looked like mine now. "I gave you the life you wanted," she said. "You were nothing. Now you are everything. All I ask is one feast. But people are dying." "They are not dying," she said. "They are crossing." I didn't understand. I sat on the wet ground. "You promised me peace. I promised you power. Now use it." She vanished into the mist. As I walked back, I saw someone by the gate. A man, tall, wearing white. He had a Bible in one hand. "Good evening, Madam Saban," he said. "Who are you?" "Pastor Obira. I've been sent." "Sent by who?" "By the one who watches all things." He looked around the compound. "There is blood here. Not the kind that stains clothes, but the kind that binds souls." I didn't speak. "I will come to the feast," he said. "And I will not come alone." He left before I could blink. The next morning, word spread. A powerful pastor had arrived from the city. The king called a meeting. At the meeting, everyone spoke at once. "My son is missing. My daughter left and never came back. Isabella, what is happening?" I stood in the center and said nothing. The king raised his hand. "The feast will still hold," he said. "But let us pray before we eat." I nodded. I went home and locked all my doors. I opened the freezer and stared at the chickens. They were still, frozen, but I saw their eyes move. I shut the lid. One more day to the feast. The river hummed, and inside my soul, I heard a quiet whisper. "This is the taste of power." The sun rose like fire the day of the feast. From the hilltop, I watched people walking into the village square. Some wore wrappers. Some wore lace. Children ran around with balloons. There was music, drums, and dancing. It was the biggest gathering Umachi had ever seen. The smell of sukbon chicken filled the air. My cooks were busy. My waiters moved like ants, setting chairs and spreading pink and gold tablecloths. Everything looked beautiful. But inside me I was cold. Pastor Obira arrived wearing a plain white robe. He carried no bag, only a Bible. He looked around quietly, then came to me. "Do you still want to go through with this?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I don't have a choice." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "There is always a choice. But if I stop now, Myrma will destroy everything. She promised freedom after this." He looked at me with kind eyes. "What she gives is never freedom. It is only a longer chain." I didn't reply. My voice was stuck in my throat. At noon, the talking drums sounded. I stood on the small stage and gave a speech. I smiled. I waved. I told them all. "Today is my thank you to the village that raised me." People clapped. Some even cried. Then I said the words I feared most. "Let the feast begin." Plates flew. Laughter rose. People ate with joy, licking fingers, shouting praises. This chicken is heaven. Madame Supban has done it again. But I watched their eyes. I saw them glaze over. I saw one girl's hands begin to shake. I saw a man fall asleep with food still in his mouth. I turned quickly and found Pastor O'Byra already praying quietly in the corner. He placed his Bible on the ground and drew a circle of chalk around it. Suddenly, a strong wind blew through the square. The sky turned dark. The music stopped. The plates dropped. And then the river goddess arrived. She didn't walk. She floated. She came in a gown made of waves and bones. Her eyes were fire. Her voice was thunder. She stood beside me on the stage and smiled. "My darling Isabella," she said, "you have done well." People looked up, confused. Some gasped. Others fainted. The king stood to speak, but no words came out. His lips moved, but his voice was gone. The villagers began to panic. "What is happening? Who is she? Why can't I feel my legs?" Children started crying. The ground trembled. Myrma raised her hand. "Peace," she said, and the air froze. "I have fed you, Umachi," she continued. "Now you will feed me." Suddenly, the people who had eaten began to fall. Not dead, not asleep, just empty. Their eyes looked hollow. Their spirits were being pulled out. Slowly, I screamed. No, this was not the deal. Myrma turned to me. "You said yes. You always said yes." I fell to my knees. I didn't know it would end like this. She looked down at me. "You asked for power. Power has a price." I looked at Pastor O'Byra. He stepped forward and entered the chalk circle. He began to pray in a strange tongue. His voice echoed like many drums at once. The ground cracked. Myrma screamed. A loud thunder tore through the sky. Then from the river, mermaids appeared, dark-skinned, shining, with eyes like mirrors. They danced around Myrma and began to pull at the souls floating in the air. The villagers screamed louder now. But Pastor O'Byra's prayer grew stronger. He lifted his Bible and shouted, "By the power that breaks all chains, I command this darkness to flee." Lightning flashed. The mermaids shrieked and began to melt like wax. Myrma stumbled backward. "You dare fight me?" she roared. O'Byra raised his Bible higher. "This land is not yours. It has been paid for already by light." Myrma grew taller. Her arms turned into snakes. Her mouth became wide like the river. She tried to swallow O'Byra, but he threw a small bottle of oil at her. The bottle broke. Fire exploded from it. Myrma screamed and fell to the ground. The wind stopped. Silence. The sky became blue again. The people who had fainted slowly opened their eyes. Some cried. Some held their chests. Some held their children. I stood up slowly. My heart was beating fast. The goddess lay on the ground, shrinking. She looked at me with pain. "Isabella, you could have ruled the world." "I don't want the world," I said, crying. "I just wanted peace." She faded away like smoke. The ground closed. The feast was over. I looked around and saw all the villagers staring at me, some in fear, some in anger, some in confusion. I walked to the center of the square and dropped to my knees. "I'm sorry," I said. "It was me. I brought this on us. I let her in." No one spoke. Only the pastor came forward and held my hand. "You are free now," he said. But I didn't feel free. I stood up, looked at the village one last time, and walked away. I walked past my mansion, past the river, past the road where Myrma once stood. I kept walking, and I never looked back. I left Umachi with bare feet. No bag, no phone, no helper, just the wind behind me and the sound of the river whispering goodbye. I didn't know where I was going. My name was still Isabella Okoye, but to them, I would always be Madame Supban, the woman who fed a village and nearly gave their souls to a goddess. I passed through small towns, slept in empty sheds, ate roasted plantains from kind strangers who didn't know who I was. I looked like a tired traveler, but inside, I was a broken girl running from the shadows of her own dream. Sometimes, I thought I saw Myrma in puddles of water. Sometimes, I heard her voice in my sleep, but mostly, there was silence. And in that silence, I saw everything clearly. I had wanted power because I had once had nothing. I wanted to be seen, to be loved, to feel like I mattered. And Myrma gave me that. But it came with a price I could never fully repay. One day, I reached a village near the foot of the mountains. A woman called Mama Igioma let me stay in her farm hut. She said I reminded her of her daughter who had died in childbirth. "I don't know your story," she said one night, "but your eyes are heavy." I cried into her lap like a baby. 4 weeks, I worked on her farm. I fed her goats. I planted yam. I scrubbed pots. Slowly, I began to breathe again. But I never told anyone who I was. Back in Umachi, stories flew. Some said I had drowned. Some said I had turned into a bird and flown into the clouds. Some said I was cursed and now lived in the forest eating leaves. But one person knew the truth. Pastor Obira. After the feast, he stayed in Umachi. He preached, healed, and helped those still suffering from the shadows of the chicken. The village was quiet for a while, until the river started bubbling again. One morning, children saw fish floating on the surface, dead and blackened. Then the school headmaster's son ran into the church crying. He said he saw a woman with red eyes walking into the river. Obira knew what it meant. Myrma was not gone. She had only been pushed back. The wound she entered through was still open, and that wound was Umachi itself. Obira called a village meeting. "This land has a deep story," he said. "You think Isabella was the beginning? No, she was only a door." People listened quietly. "A long time ago," he continued, "a goddess ruled this land. Her name was Myrma. She demanded sacrifices, firstborn sons, every 5 years. Your ancestors obeyed her out of fear. Until a missionary came. The elders nodded. They had heard that part. That missionary prayed day and night. He stood by the river and poured oil into the water. He broke the cycle. But the goddess swore to return. She found Isabella," someone whispered. "Yes," Obira said. "She found pain. And through pain, she entered again." The villagers wept. "What do we do now?" the king asked. Obira stood tall. "We heal. Not with hate, not with gossip, but with unity and light." And so, for the first time in many years, the people of Umachi stood together. They walked to the river, holding candles and buckets of holy water. They prayed. They sang. They poured oil into the water. Not to fight, but to cleanse. They burned the remaining enchanted chickens in a deep pit. And as they did, a strange thing happened. The river grew still. Very still. Then it sparkled just once, like a tear that had fallen and been accepted. Peace returned, but the trust was gone. People didn't eat in public anymore. They stopped trusting food they didn't cook. The love that once filled Umachi was now careful, quiet, and slow. They still whispered my name, even when I was far away. I didn't return. I couldn't. I stayed in the mountain village, far from roads, far from memory. Mama Igioma died peacefully in her sleep one rainy night. I buried her with my own hands. After that, I moved again. I changed my name. To some, I was Auntie Belle. To others, I was the quiet woman. But to myself, I was no longer Madame Sutban. I was just a girl who once wanted love so badly she made a deal with darkness. A girl who became a queen and lost everything. A girl who learned that pain, if not healed, can open doors even evil spirits are afraid to enter. Sometimes I still dream of the river. Sometimes I see the faces of those who ate my chicken and fell. Sometimes I sit under a tree and ask God to forgive me, even when I can't forgive myself. But I've learned something. When life throws you into the water, don't make a deal with the river. Make peace with your pain. Hold on to light. And if someone ever offers you everything your heart desires, ask them what it will cost. Because nothing sweet comes without salt, and some prices can never be paid twice. If you have not subscribed to my channel, you might not hear my voice again, but if you are, then you are growing every day. Check my page for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.